Hi, my name is CJ and this is my RC channel.
Okay, let's have a look inside this diff and see what we've got going on. Now, again, all of these parts, the dog bones, these diffs, are all available. So if you break things, you can replace them. I'm gonna go ahead and take these screws and just drop them inside this diff cover here. Yeah, there's almost no lube in here, but it is metal, so that's decent at least. But I need to take all this lube out. I mean, what there is in there just isn't very much, so I need to get that all out, clean this up, and rebuild. And I may use those new gears. I want to see if they're any different than these, because there was a little bit of a grindy feel to it. But that may just been the fact that there was very little lube. So we'll see once all this stuff gets cleaned up. Okay, now I need to get that screw out of there. Put a wrench in like this so you can hold it. And then there's a screw in here. It holds that out drive in place. And this feels nice and stiff. Feels like someone put some thread locker on there. Now, by taking the time to do this, I'm assuring that this car is going to run for a good long while, that I'm going to be able to, you know, charge up the batteries and run it and have a good time with it and continue doing that. That's a really soft plastic diff. Look at this. And there's a washer in here that may have been under that screw. I don't know. It looks like no, it wasn't. May have been on shimming one of these. Yeah, there it is. It's in between the gears. I don't know why that isn't coming out. It should just pull right out. They must have put so much thread locker on there that they glued it in place. Okay, I'm gonna try soaking this in some motor spray and seeing if I can't loosen that up. In the meantime, let's see if this one is glued on too. At least this one I could get a screwdriver under the edge there if I need to and try popping the gear off. Yeah, it's coming. There we go. There's our bushing, our bearing. Nice sealed bearing. We got a shim. And our gear. These do look kind of like cheap pot metal. So let me take a look at these other gears I got. Okay, these look like much better gears. The metal is higher quality. The machining is better. Like, these gears have some rough edges and they just don't look as precise. They've even given us hardware to go with these. So I think I'm going to go ahead and when I do the build up, I'm going to use these gears instead. I'll need to check them all, make sure they fit, make sure that I got the right set, but they look correct. Okay, I'm gonna let that sit for a while, and I'll come back. Okay, I was able to get it out. Took a little effort. What I ended up doing was grabbing the end here with the pliers and moving it back and forth a couple times while pulling, and slowly worked it loose. They're very tightly pressed into these things. They really shouldn't be that hard to get out, but they were. Maybe it was all the Loctite they put on, I don't know. In any event, I got it out, not a problem. These are definitely a better set of gears. The quality on their manufacture is much higher. The quality of the metal is higher. I highly recommend picking these up. It's a cheap upgrade, and it's definitely worth it. Now, one thing you need to remember when you are looking for parts for this vehicle, at least at this time, winter of 2020, the parts are not listed under the name of this kit. There are no parts yet for this kit, technically, because it's so new. They haven't, changed the numbers and things on them. What you want to do is search for 144001 parts, and you'll find all of the parts, the diff cases. The only things that aren't going to interchange is the chassis and the drive shaft, but anything like steering assemblies, the arms, the knuckles, the cases. By the way, you can get these plastic cases, a front and a rear case, both, all four pieces, the two tops, two bottoms, for under $6. Just to give you an idea again of how inexpensive some of these parts are. So you're looking for the parts for the 144001, and that will get you the same things. Now, there were several sets of gears. I will give you the part number in the description to the set of gears that I chose. That way you're sure to get the ones that are of this higher quality metal. And again, they're also machined better. You can just tell by looking at them that the tolerances are better, the edges are more precise, they're smoother, they're not jagged and choppy, and you can just tell it's a higher quality metal as well. So I'm just going to do the reassembly now. I'm going to be using 2 different weights of diff fluid. I'm going to be using 5,000 weight in the rear and 7,000 weight in the front. And that's just going to be a starting point. There is no center diff, so not something you got to worry about. Make sure that you put the shims back in. There's a shim that goes behind each of these 2 gears, and then there's a small shim that goes on the outside of each of these little gears. I'll show you how those go together. These little shafts that make up the spider have notches in them so that they go together. You have to make sure you line them up. So actually, before I put in that shim, I'm going to put a drop of lube in here. You want to make sure everything is lubricated properly, and you don't want these things running on any dry surfaces. And this stuff is so thick it can be hard for it to get into tight places. So I'm just putting a couple drops in there now that will go behind the shim. And then I'm gonna tap that down. And I'm gonna put another couple of drops on top of the shim, so that will be between the shim and the gear. Now eventually lubrication will get in there, but you don't want to wait for that. So, you know, again, because this stuff is so thick, you want to go ahead and put stuff in advance. Okay, now remember to make sure that you get a good grip on this. Just slide a wrench in there. I was just on Banggood a few minutes ago ordering an item or two that I had wanted, and I went ahead and for $7.79 I ordered a new set of front axles that instead of let me just check something here. Oh wow, those are, well, I guess I'll have a spare set. I should have checked on that before I ordered, because now I've got an extra set. In the rear here, they use a dog bone connection at either end. So the outdrive has a setup like this. On the front, it's got a dog bone connector at the differential. So again, like this. But here at the hub, it has a CV joint or constant velocity joint. Forgive me if I've got that term wrong. In any event, it has a CV joint, which makes for a smoother operating joint, because it moves to steeper angles than a dog bone type of connector. So I've got that in there tight. Now I need to do this side. So put on your bearing first, slide your outdrive through, and it's not a bad idea to put a little grease here because that's metal on metal. Let's see, here we go. Got some good old black grease. Oh, that's right. I'm using the wrong fluid, but that's okay. I just used a few drops for lubrication. I want the 5,000 in the rear. I want to be a little thicker in the front. A little bit there. Put down the shim. Okay, so now it's time to assemble the spider. I'm just putting a little drop on each of these so that there'll be some lubrication inside the gear when I slide that on like that. And putting a little bit back here is going to help these shims stick. They're not going to fall off as easy while I'm working on it. So we're just lowering that in and making sure that the notch is facing up. Okay. Now you see you've got your 4 holes here, and then you've got these 2 sliders here, and then 2 more here and 2 more here. So that's what guides our pins for the spider, like that. And the gears go in between the post holes. And we got one more. There we go. And make sure that you've got your spiders lined up so that they are one on top of another. The notches are dropping into each other. And now we are going to fill this. Whoa! That wasn't what I had in mind. That's what I get for using these cheap little bottles. It's no big deal. No damage done. It's just messy. This stuff is sticky and thick as can be. Okay, now we're getting near the top, but there's a lot of space that may not have anything in it yet. So what we're going to do is rotate the gears and fluid will draw down to the bottom underneath the gears, because it's so thick that any bubbles or like space underneath the gears where there isn't, where the lubrication hasn't gotten down there, that especially when you're using the stuff that's even thicker than this stuff, these are thin as diff fluid goes. 7 and 8,000 is very thin. Some of my center diffs have as much as 150,000, 200,000. Now, I want to fill this so it's a couple millimeters from the top. Different kits have different recommendations, so this is something I'm just going to have to trial and error and find out what works best. But that's probably pretty good. So it's to the top of the gears. Just kind of making sure I'm lined up on those 4 holes. I'm not going to take that down till it touches. I'm just going to get it close until I've got more screws in. Then I'll start tightening them. I do not recommend that you just use an off-the-shelf grease to fill these up, or some type of oil. You want to get a legitimate diff fluid from a hobby store. You can order it online, or if you have a local hobby store and they stock it, you're set. I would start out in this kind of range, not more than like 12,000, 1,500 at absolute most. You know, 10 and 7 or 7 and 5, like what I'm doing, is probably a good place to start. The thicker the fluid, the more it acts like a locker or a limited slip. And you want the car to be able to turn. You know, and we don't have a center differential to take up any slack or anything like that. So you don't want to make these too stiff. Now, if I were doing speed runs with this, I would probably rebuild them with a thicker fluid, especially up in front, to try to make sure the car stays in a straight line, more, you know, that it doesn't try to wander as much. Now, we also don't have any gaskets, so it'll be interesting to see how this, how well this seals if it leaks. It is a soft plastic, as you saw earlier when I was able to squeeze the diff housing, so that may help it seal. We'll see. Don't over tighten. You don't want to strip. That's definitely something you're going to have to be careful about with this car, especially because of these harsher threaded screws. So we're getting a good diff action. It's a little, feels a little choppy. Might need to take out one of those shims. Not sure. Just kind of exercising it a bit. Seeing if it'll settle in. Tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take it apart. I'm gonna take out one of the big shims and put it back together and see how that does. I'm wondering if there isn't too much pressure. Try loosening a couple of these screws here and then try it again. Yeah, see, now it's a lot smoother. So yeah, I'm gonna try taking out that shim. I'll bet you it works better. Now, I understand that there's a an aluminum diff case. In other words, this soft black plastic differential case, you can replace that with an aluminum one. I've seen the part before. I'll have to look into maybe trying one of those at some point. That might work a little better. So let's set this down. Okay, let's put this together again. And don't pack these things full. I saw a video of somebody who was taking basically like an automotive grease and just packing the differential full to the gills. That is not good. You want a lot of fluid in there because that is going to slow down the gears and give you that, you know, kind of like a limited slip effect that you're looking for. But if you put too much in there, and if it's in thick automotive grease, you're going to be in trouble. You could actually damage the diff. It's just not made for that. You want a good bit in there, but you don't want it over full. And when you tighten up these screws, do it in a star pattern. A little bit more each time as you go around. See, that's the problem with this soft plastic. May need to back off on these a little bit Like I'm going to back off each one about a quarter turn. There we go. That's a lot better. See, this plastic is so soft that as I'm tightening these screws down, if I tighten them too far, I'm actually, squishing this plastic in. Go like 1/8 of a turn less. Okay, so you want to kind of adjust that until you've got a smooth action. I was almost tempted to take out the other shim as well. I'm definitely going to look for those aluminum cases. The aluminum case won't be able to compress. I'm actually going to go a little more. Just a touch. We're still tight against the housing. It's just, there we go. That's nice. I like that. I can live with that. See, and this is the kind of thing that would get people's diffs. Remember when I first opened it up and I said, I'm getting this grinding kind of thing, this kind of chunking. That's because when they assembled it, they tightened it down so tight that they were collapsing the case and squishing the gears against each other, and they were binding. Now I've got a nice smooth action, and at the same time it's got a stiffness to it because of the fluid, but it's even. It's not like cogging or something like that. I'm definitely gonna save that shim though for the future when I get the aluminum diff cases, if I get them, if they exist. I think I saw them, so I'll go back and look, but a lot of the parts may not be there right now because we're coming up on the holidays and a lot of stuff is selling out. So I'll check on that, but if they're there, I'm gonna get them, and then I'll need this extra the extra shim, because I'll want one on either side, and then hopefully I won't have any issues with cogging. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and save these old gears just because. If everything goes well, I'll toss them later probably, but for now I'm going to hang on to them. And as long as I am swapping out those gears, and I've swapped out my pinion gear, my ring gear, I'm gonna swap out my pinion gear too. And this is probably a good time to go ahead and get the drive shaft out so I can swap that gear, because I want to do all of this at the same time. So I should be able to just leave the suspension in place here. Let me just pull out these two dog bones and set them aside so they're not flopping around. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. No, wrong size. I actually do want to take off that rear suspension because I want to check out those little pills and see if we have adjustable rear suspension back there. I'm going to go ahead and put those screws in that tray. Oh, damn it. They have put so much Loctite on that motor mount. I hope I can get those screws out. I got one of them out. One of them is really in there. See, that's the thing with Loctite. You have to, even with the blue stuff, you got to be very careful. You put too much on there and you're gluing your parts together. Oh, damn it. It is stripped to hell. Unbelievable. I've heard people having problems with these motor mounts. One person even said, just buy a spare because you're going to need it. Yeah, I'm just wrecking that screw more and more. I'm gonna have to drill it out. I mean, look at how much Loctite's on this one screw. It's just painted on. It just takes a dab. I have gone on and on about that in various videos. And this is what happens when there's too much. I mean, it's just all in here. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. I'm going to go on Banggood and I'm going to check on that aluminum case as long as I'm ordering an extra motor mount. Thank God I've got one on the way, but I'm going to get a second one going. Okay, they do have the aluminum ones. There's a link in the description below. There's also a link to the gears. I ordered a set of easy outs. If you guys aren't familiar, you'll see how those work. Basically, it's like a special type of bit that you can put in a power driver and extract screws that are stuck. Hopefully it'll get it out. If it doesn't, I'll just have to drill it out and replace the aluminum motor mount completely. So I'll have that in a few days. So I can't do everything I wanted to do for you guys right now, but I can just put the video on hold, and in the meantime I can rebuild the front diff and do some of the other things I wanted to do. Like I wanted to check out the little pills here and see what those do for us. So let's have a look. Hopefully they, yep, good, they didn't Loctite the hell out of these. This is one of the reasons I don't like Phillips heads. They strip way too easily compared to hex. The good thing is when that motor mount gets out, that's a finer thread on those screws. I should be able to replace that with some hex head hardware. That's hard to take out because, excuse me, actually I didn't need to do that. I could have just taken out these two screws and pulled out that rear plate. This kit is very easy to disassemble and work on. And yes, so you see how the hole is over here? We can take this out like that, and we can flip it around. Now, that only gives us 2 settings, but 2 settings is better than no settings. And there's going to be 2 settings up at the front, and likewise at the front suspension, there will be at least 1 or 2 adjustments up there for each end. So that's really nice. And I'm going to go ahead and swap those. Make a little less rear toe. So what that's going to do is bring these 2 arms closer in, which means that the tires aren't pointing at each other as much. Now that makes for less straight line stability, but it makes for higher speed. So it's kind of a trade-off. Most things with suspension are trade-offs. Let's just take a quick look at the front ones too. Yeah, same thing. And right now they are high, so that's some front kick or roll center. So we have adjustments up there as well. So we're definitely going to have the same thing in the front. That's great. That's also one of the reasons that you guys, when you're disassembling and reassembling, you need to be careful. not to strip the screw heads, not to strip the plastic. You want to tighten them, but you don't want to over tighten. Just make things snug. And remember, when you're screwing metal screws into plastic, you don't need Loctite. The plastic acts like Loctite. It has enough friction that the screw isn't going to just come undone on you. Let's have a look at this. I'll just pull that out. That's great. We got bearings all over the place. There's a bearing here, a bearing here, a bearing here. There's undoubtedly bearings up in there. I want to see if there's a... Yep, there is a... Is that a Phillips head or an Allen? It looks like an Allen wrench. Can't see very well, though. Let me... Well, that's an Allen wrench. Okay. I should just be able to grab this. And again, this has so damn much Loctite. I don't believe it. Oh, man. They put so much Loctite on this bolt that the bolt just broke off rather than unscrew. Unbelievable. Wow, I the words that want to come out of my mouth. Unbelievable. So now I'm going to have to wait until I can get one of these before I can put on that metal gear and replace this plastic gear. That's really frustrating that they are doing that. That they are, that's cheap hardware. That's not a hardened steel bolt, number one. And number two, they put on so much Loctite that you know, it tore it off. It sheared the bolt, loosening it. It started to loosen and then it just sheared. Oh, man. We've even got a little adjuster block back here. You could potentially put a larger piece back here and get some more lift out of the rear end. This little kit reeks of potential, and yet the way they assemble it at the factory is just an abomination. I mean, you just have this super easy to disassemble setup here. You can get to the diff with a half dozen bolts. You can take off the suspension almost as easily. You can make all kinds of little adjustments. And then you've got stuff like a motor mount that's glued in place and a drive shaft that's glued in place with low quality hardware that breaks because it's been glued in with so much damn Loctite. These could use a little bit of grease. I'm kind of surprised that they're completely dry. damn it. Forgot to lube up the ring and pinion gear. Now, when you're doing stuff like this diff case, don't tighten that down all the way. And I'm kind of doing a, around and round here. Just get them just down and come back at them again once you've gotten everything done. You don't want to twist this case out of shape. Everything does seem to be fairly soft plastic. Stuff like this, I usually do the 2-finger rule, just 2 fingers on the screwdriver, and any more than that, and you're potentially applying too much pressure. You don't want to strip stuff. Okay, so our rear end is back together. It's not perfect where we want it, because we didn't get to switch one of the gears, but that'll come down the road. I'm sure they'll have these drive shafts available soon. I'll just have to live with it the way it is for now. In the meantime, I can rebuild our front differential here, and we'll get a look at the suspension. We know that we've got multiple adjustable. These pills are in fact adjustable. And when my new cases come in, these 4 screws are going to go to hex heads, and all of these will get switched for M2 hex with finer thread hardware. And when the motor mount comes in and I get the easy out, these will get switched out the same way. And I'll just keep doing that until everything is Allen heads. Now, as long as I'm at the back here, I might as well put in my droop screws. And I've got some stainless hardware. Let's look at how long those are. Those need to be fairly long. So they're just starting to come through, because as you can see, these droop down really far. That's further than, you want, as far as, like right now I can't even, really turn the axles because they're binding, because it's so drooped down so far, the angles are so acute. Now, to properly adjust these, we're going to do this on a board with no wheels and tires on it, and I'll demonstrate that later on down the road, because this car definitely needs a decent amount of tuning. See the difference right now between this side and this side? Because this side has a screw right there coming down through, which stops on the frame. Now that can go further, and it will, but right now I'm just getting it, in place, just putting the screw in so that it's there for when I get to that phase. And now that I know that this is the right size, I'll go ahead and pull 2 more and put them in the front right now while I'm at it. see, now you can see this one's higher than this side. And when you do this, when you do it on the board, on a tuning board, you want them to be absolutely equal. You don't want any difference from one side to the other, and I'll demonstrate how to do that and how to measure it. See, I might be able to use a shorter pair of screws up front because these adjust even easier than the ones back there. I'll worry about that later, though. I can switch them anytime now that I've gone ahead and threaded them in. In case you guys are wondering, these are M3s that I'm using here, and they are probably 12 millimeter length M3s. Okay. So now we can go about this diff. So, okay, to get to the front diff, let's think about the least number of bolts that need to be removed. I need to remove the 6 that hold the case together. I need to remove these 2 bolts so I can remove this crossbar for the steering mechanism. Otherwise, I can't reach those 2 screws down there. If this wasn't here, I wouldn't even need to do that. So, and in theory, I can just leave the shock tower attached because all I'm doing is pulling out the diff to work on it. And these screws were not very tight at all. Just a note to you that you may want to check them. Now, this does not have bearings. It has a bushing, which is just fine for this car. I got one on this side too. I'm just going to go ahead and keep these together. Set them in this little parts tray over here. Another thing that I noticed, and I've got it somewhere else. Anyway, the instructions that come with this are very complete. They give you lists of all the parts and exploded views. It's not a step-by-step assembly set of instructions, but it's not a kit. It's a ready to run. But they pretty much give you enough drawings that you should be able to figure out how to disassemble this and put it back together if you're not experienced with RC cars. I've done this stuff enough that it's quite easy to do this. Everything is familiar, and it's a very nicely designed car. I mean, there's issues with things being cheap, like the differential plastic being so soft that you can squeeze the differential, and things like them using too much damn Loctite. But that's assembly issues and small stuff. Overall, the car is well designed. See, if you were at the track and you wanted to change the diff fluid to make the front end hook up better or whatever, we're taking off 8 screws and we're going to be into that diff, and the most we would need is 10. That's the 2 extras to pull this off here. Well, actually, also there's 2 here. There's another pair of screws for the back one, but those are part of the wing mount also. So in any event, I can just lift this out right here like that, and I can pull out my diff. just like that, without having to remove the shock tower or disconnect the camber links or anything. I mean, that's pretty quick and easy. This differential is a lot smoother than the rear one was. It's still got a little cogging in it, but not nearly as much as the rear. It's much looser. I also get the feeling that there's very little lubrication in there. Or if what's in there, it's very thin. Yeah, see, there's almost nothing in there. Look at that. It's like there's some waxy kind of lube, and that's it. And most of it's on the walls, not on the gears. Okay, let's cross our fingers and hope this screw comes out without stripping or breaking. There we go. Even got the gear out without too much trouble. Again, there is no lube here. There's nothing on either side. This is why these cars blow up. There's almost nothing in this diff except this waxy stuff on the walls. That's really not good. Now, look here. You can see the threads where their screws, when they screwed them in, are stretching out this plastic housing. That's chintzy. Now, if you're ever unsure which side the gear goes, there's a convenient little trough here that you can see where the gear is going to run. So that makes it easy for you to figure out which side you're on, or which side it needs to be on. Now, I'm not going to worry about greasing these two dog bone ends because I'm going to be lubing the other ends also, where the CV joint is. So I'll be doing both of those at the same time. That just fits right in there. There we go. Now you notice how much faster this goes once you've done one end and you kind of get the feel for what goes where. Everything goes together easier the next time through. And the more you do this, the better you'll be at not just fixing this car, but fixing any car.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel.